And let's go ahead and share screen. Very cool. Because I want to shout out Angela for making it to the leaderboard today. So here in the gym, we have a scorecard for our level system. And here, let me see if I can scoot over, show that off real quick. So up here, we have this level system. And we'll just click on that. And right now we're trying to get everybody through level 1. And so today, Angela knocked out the 15-second flex tang, which got her a green achievement dot. Pretty cool.
Yay.
I don't like how this has turned out to look like an F for some reason. We need to balance that out. So yeah, so what else we'll be working on, and as this relates to today's talk, is we're working on the squat, and then what relates to today is the rower, or the 2K rower. And the metric that we're using to look at a good, quotes, good 2K row time is a tool that you can find down here, this link at the bottom, at the Concept 2 website. It's the Vo2 Max Calculator. And what this calculator does is it takes your weight, your gender, and your best row time, and it gives you a calculation of your hypothetical Vo2 max. And so your Vo2 max is basically your ability to use oxygen for energy output. And the reason that I decided to go with the rower, because we also have bikes in here, we could do running, or, there's a bunch of different cardiovascular metrics. But the reason I chose to focus on the rower, aside from the fact that it's an awesome full body workout and that you can do it every day and recover from it, is because of this tool. Because Concept 2, and because indoor rowing being such a worldwide sport, they've done such a good job at data collection that these are actually validated metrics. So your proposed Vo2 max at that website is pretty accurate. And I found this interesting. And so the topic that we're going to talk about today is wearables. And because more and more people are using wearables, so like the Apple Watch and different heart rate monitors. And it's something that I hadn't incorporated into my practice in the past because, not everybody had one, and I wasn't going to ask people to go out and get a wearable just to participate in my program. But with more and more people owning them and using them anyway, I want to empower y'all to be able to look through them and find out, the meaning behind some of these metrics, and find out some sort of normative ranges and some goal setting around that. So we're going to get into that. But first, I have a little monologue that I want to say. At least I saved that on my phone. And this is something that, I'm going to put this link up on YouTube. And if you're trying to motivate anybody to get involved in exercise or training, just a little food for thought. So this actually is based off of a discussion I had in the gym recently. And it's one that comes up actually pretty commonly. And so it's about productivity. One of the biggest obstacles to getting started with a fitness program or sticking with a fitness program is time, or the feeling of not having enough time. And that is always coming from a place that I think comes from our society of wanting to prioritize productivity, right? I truly believe that everybody who I interact with is genuinely wanting to do better for their health, but they haven't quite figured out how to prioritize the time. But my question is, what does it mean to be productive? And I really mean this in like a philosophical sense. So let's kind of zoom out. Why do we work so hard? It's to bring home the bacon, to put food on the table, put shelter over our head. And, when we talk about I studied psychology. That was my original degree. That's my primary discipline that got me into this field. Is we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And at the base of that pyramid, so it's a pyramid of needs, at the base is food and shelter. Okay. And it works its way up to, purpose and social acceptance and love. And ultimately at the top, you're getting to self-actualization, which is you reaching your fullest potential, where you have meaning and productivity, and you are excelling in that. Everything is aligning in your life. You can't get to self-actualization if you're down in the base level. And, not everybody can control that. God forbid, look at what's going on in the world right now. If you're in the Ukraine, you're probably not trying to self-actualize at this moment. You're trying to survive. So we are blessed right here today in America that most of us have those base needs taken care of. And yet we still work like crazy around the clock. And trust me, this is coming from, one of the bigger offenders of this as well. But what does it mean? Are we actually being productive, right? What if there was a little bit more time without losing anything in terms of, if I worked a little less, would I not be able to put food on the table? Would I not be able to pay the bills? And how much, right? Because base level, what we're actually talking about is survival. We're talking about being productive to survive. And so at what point does exercise actually become the priority? You only have so much time and energy. That's what we're talking about. And so we want to make sure that productivity actually has the right outcome measure today. So that's what we're going to talk about today is outcome measures. Things that are not just money in the bank, food on the table, a better car or a new toy, but things that actually lead to longer life, to better health, right? So to me, there's really only two measures that are important. There's how good do I feel today, and how many days can I feel good? And when you put those two things together, it creates one outcome metric, one measure, and that measure is health span, right? So I'm actually not that interested in lifespan. The mainstream medical community, they've got that figured out. They can keep you alive with medicine and machines and all that for forever if they wanted to. It'll be up to your family eventually to decide who's going to pull the plug, right? Keeping you alive is not the problem, but giving you a life, giving you quality of life, making every day, the most fulfilling possible day. That, if your body, if your mind, if your emotions, if your physical ability to perform is not in that equation, then I would argue you are neglecting productivity. And there has to be time for that. You have to prioritize that. And so that's what I'm interested in. That's what I really consider my job to you guys, is to offer you a path to greater health span, to more days that you feel good, period, right? The ability to feel better today and tomorrow, and to have more of those days. But first, you have to be interested in this. I think you guys are because you're here. But you know, if you have family members, if you have friends, maybe you can find a better way to phrase what I'm saying today. But you know, we have to challenge that mantra, that idea that we have ingrained in our culture, where it's just about the grind, it's just about the rat race, and health is something that we can do later, because there might not be a later, and we don't want that to catch us off guard. And in all honesty, waking up and feeling amazing and seeing what your body can do will be way more valuable. It will be way more rewarding. It will bring you much more happiness than any sort of thing, any object that's outside of you. The true path to happiness and flourishing is within. So a health journey, a fitness journey really is, in a way, kind of a spiritual journey. It's a journey within. It's a journey of discovery. And this is not a new thing. I mean, this is a path to enlightenment with yoga, right? In Hinduism, not that we're all going to be Hindus here, but there were many paths to achieve enlightenment, and the physical path was one of them. And it was through yoga. That's how they did it. But the idea was that through physical mastery, you could achieve that self-actualization that Maslow is talking about. And on the surface, it looked like maybe they were poor, right? Maybe you're thinking, okay, they have some food and some shelter, but that middle section of the pyramid looks a little less than. But yet they're getting to the peak of the pyramid. So that's what I would just challenge you all to look at, that pyramid. Go literally look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and decide how full each level needs to be and what it needs to be filled with. And look at where it's overflowing and see if there aren't things that you can't remove and assumptions that you can't dispute in order to actually allow yourself to move up to that higher part of the pyramid. All right, so that's my monologue. And so now let's get into the nitty gritty. So we're talking about wearables. I'm going to reference the Apple Watch, and I'm going to get rid of this screen here. Give me 1 second. I'll pin myself. Okay, looks like I'm pinned. So on the Apple Watch, and even if you don't have the Apple Watch, if you have an iPhone or if you have any kind of smartphone, most likely on your phone you have some sort of health app. So on my phone here, it is this heart, and if you click that, you get a health app. Okay, so within the health app, your phone has likely been tracking you all along. So one of the first, so obviously the first sort of health app that I really like is Chronometer, but we've already spent a ton of time talking about Chronometer as a food tracking app. We've done lessons on Chronometer. So we're not going to talk about that today, but that obviously is there. That is a tool that's going to help us look at our nutrition. That's our input. Okay, but the next thing I like to pay attention to is output. So I found it very interesting when I logged in to this health app for the first time after owning my phone for 1.5 years, that it had been tracking my steps all along. And so when you get into that health app, you can right away see steps. And if you guys can mute yourself at home, and sorry, it's just distracting when I can hear noises in the background. And it will give you a breakdown. So it'll give you a breakdown of your steps today, over the last week, over the last month, over the last 6 months, over the last year. And this is a huge tool and a huge motivator, right? We kind of know, like, be more active, 10,000 steps, but now you've got something in your pocket that's holding you accountable, okay? And this is a great way to gamify it. Personally, that's why I have the scorecard here in the gym. There is something about making it a game, making it a challenge that makes you much more likely to follow through and to stay consistent with it. We are just by nature competitive and driven by our reward system for achieving these sort of gamified desired outcomes. Okay, that's why we all love sports, and not everybody, but everybody I bet you has some sort of game that really gets their brain kind of tickling it, right? Really lighting it up. So I would challenge you to all, take a look at your health app and strive for that 10,000 a day. Okay. This is what's called your non-exercise activity. Okay. NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, basically how much calories you're burning throughout the day. Okay. This will actually allow us to eat a little bit more, which is kind of cool. Or burn some extra calories if we're not otherwise hungry. This is what really gets the metabolism firing throughout the day. The output, so this will be now the non-exercise activity that we do through walking. And then when we layer into it our gym sessions, this is going to be our output. This is what starts to change our body. And normally we're looking externally, right? We're looking at, are my arms looking more toned? Is my belly looking more slim? Is the scale going down? But there's a lot happening internally that most people on a fitness journey are never measuring. But we have it like right here already happening. So I just want to basically turn you guys onto it so that you are aware of some of these metrics. So my next favorite one is going to be resting heart rate. And so I'm looking at the phone now. So below steps, at least on my phone, it's going to say show all health data. And when I click that, now you can see really all kinds of neat stuff, especially about the steps. It was talking about step length. Oh, looks like David came back. It's talking about step length. It's talking about double time support. It tells you about walking imbalances that you have. Below that, it gets into sleep. And if you keep scrolling down, it's going to show heart rate. And so right there, it's going to say heart rate. And it's going to show you, I think it's going to show your average for the last day. And you can click on heart rate and, excuse me, it's going to break down a few different things. So within that, you're going to click on show more heart rate data. And now it's going to show you, so it's going to show you your average from yesterday, your range, your resting heart rate. So this is different. So my average heart rate yesterday was 61 beats per minute. But you really need to get into this app and keep digging a little bit deeper, because if you see, my resting heart rate was lower. It's 54 beats per minute. And that's a big difference. So I want to get you into the app and to go all the way looking for the resting heart rate. The resting heart rate, and this was the studies that I failed to upload that I was going to share, is correlated with some amazing health outcomes. So the short version of those studies is that they found that there was a couple studies. The one, so midlife resting heart rate converged with longer health span. like years later. So even if their health like deteriorated after that midlife check-in, so they did, this was a longitudinal study. They measured people, right at midlife. I forget what the exact age they considered, probably in the 40s somewhere. And then they just followed them through the death registry and looked at when people died. Okay. So those people could have like turned to alcohol, like anything. They could have all stopped exercising. It didn't matter. The folks who had a better resting heart rate at midlife ended up living longer later. Okay. But resting heart rate is something that we can improve right now, today. And there were similar studies for Vo2 Max as well. So I'm going to share, I'll share those slides next week so I don't confuse them and put out, false data on the internet. But the best way to improve resting heart rate is through cardiovascular exercise. And you can change your resting heart rate within a couple of weeks' time. So one of the charts I was going to share showed like optimal zones for all sexes and age groups. And pretty much no matter what age or sex you are, if you can get yourself into the 50s, that's considered very good. So that would be my goal for all of you, and that is very achievable. When I was doing marathon training, I had about a year and a half where basically all I did was endurance training. And I was also giving blood during that year, and I would often have to argue with the technicians from the Red Cross and explain to them that I was an endurance athlete, so they would let me give blood because my resting heart rate was in the 40s. And that was actually considered too low. They wanted a heart rate in the 50s. So that 50s is really the optimal zone for most average people. So I would challenge you, if you have a wearable, if you have a watch, or even if you have a phone, check and see if it's giving you that metric. Okay, I think you might have to have a watch for that metric to be available. But it can get really low. So I think they showed that Ronaldo has a heart rate, he's like a soccer player, in the 30s, and the lowest ever recorded was 27. Okay, so there's a lot of room. So if you have found that your resting heart rate is in the 60s and 70s or higher, that right there is an amazing deliverable that we can work on, and that really, you can take home and just feel so amazing about. Like, it's cool for bragging rights to say like, hey, I hung over, my chin over the bar for 15 seconds. Like, I definitely encourage you to tell all your friends about that because I think it's super awesome. But, going to sleep at night knowing that your resting heart rate is in an optimal zone should bring you a lot of peace of mind, and just a lot of peace in general, because that is letting you know, it's giving you a forecast of your future. Okay, so resting heart rate. Another one that's interesting is heart rate variability. The reason I would encourage you to look at heart rate variability is it will inform you about whether or not you need to employ some relaxation techniques. So heart rate variability, you actually want it to be a bigger number. You want there to be more of a discrepancy between, so like for instance, yesterday I said my average heart rate was 61 and my resting was 54. And presumably, so my range here was 54 to 99. Okay, I'm looking at that right now. So the bigger the range, and it'll give you your variability by like a number, it'll just be a set number. So maybe it's the difference between the two. The bigger the variability, the better. And what the variability actually indicates is flexibility between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you have a lower variability, it means you're kind of stuck. And more likely than not, it means you're stuck in sympathetic. You're kind of probably just like stressed out all the time, fight or flight, go, 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 go. And so you can increase your heart rate variability through exercise, but most likely what you need to do is improve your ability to get into rest and digest and relaxation. So during the day, I will put this challenge out here. I would challenge you all who have the watch to get your watch on and to get it monitoring your current heart rate, and then to do a breathing exercise. The one I like is Wim Hof, but you could find any calm or relaxing breathing app that's out there. And I want you to do that exercise and be watching your heart rate. And I want you to try and actively think about slowing your heart rate down. The heart rate is something that's autonomic, it's automatic, but you actually have more control over it than you realize. And you can train that. So I've done this, I'll do the Wim Hof. And the Wim Hof, by the way, is 3 rounds, and stick with it because the magic really happens in the 3rd round. A lot of times that 1st round, you're like, this just seems like work. It seems kind of stupid and annoying. But after that 1st breath hold, you'll notice a difference. And he'll even cue you, pay attention to your heart rate, try and slow it down. So I really like that for this activity. And so I'll do just that and listen, and you can watch your heart rate come down. You're training yourself in that moment to have a lower heart rate. You're training yourself to get into the parasympathetic state, which is so important for normalizing your hormones, for proper digestion, for proper immune function, for proper recovery. We have to be able to get into that state. So exercise is going to help you with that. Active breathing, sort of meditation exercise is going to help with that. And then sleep. Sleep is going to be huge. So again, in these apps, you can look at your sleep. And this one, I'm pretty sure you don't even need the watch for. I'm not exactly sure how it works. I think it just is listening to your breathing, to be honest with you, because it's tracking my sleep accurately. And I put my phone on airplane mode every night, and oftentimes my watch is plugged in downstairs. But I've been paying attention, and my phone is still capturing that data. Now, if you do wear the watch in the night, it'll capture your heart rate data as well, which is kind of interesting. But your resting heart rate is in the app it does not calculate or does not take into consideration your sleeping heart rate. So that is purely a waking, resting heart rate. Okay, so don't get that confused. Don't think like I have to wear the watch all night to get a reading on my resting heart rate. You don't, but it might give you some other interesting metrics. But basically what this will look like is it will show you a graph of your night's sleep, and it will kind of tell you whether or not you're getting as much as you want, exactly which hours you slept. And so I can look at, last week. So last night I slept from 9:15 to 4:29, which sounds about right. And so it's kind of neat. And now if you have the watch, it might get into REM sleep and heart rate variability and all that. So it's pretty neat. But you can use your phone to your advantage. You can set reminders that it's time to wind down. You can have the phone sort of go into night mode, and you can obviously set alarms. And so I'd highly recommend looking at that sleep. Okay, sleep in and of itself is a whole lecture. You need to create a routine. And what I say is treat yourself like a baby. Like the way I sleep trained Lincoln, you have to do it to yourself, right? And you can't deviate. Okay, this is not something where we're just saying I'll go to sleep when I feel like it, and then hope that we're going to get sleepy while we're watching TV or doing chores or playing games or whatever. Like, unless you have a nighttime ritual, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So the nighttime ritual, in short, is to unplug. Okay, so whatever you determine your bedtime is going to be, you need to unplug an hour before and find ways to actively wind down. That includes everything from dimming the lights in the house, to not eating food, to maybe that's when you want to take a hot bath or a hot shower, do some stretching or some reading. And if you really struggle to unplug, then at least switch to audio. Okay, because literally part of the problem with being plugged into the screens, whether it be the phone, whether it be the computer or the TV, is actually just the blue light that's coming into your eyes is preventing your body from releasing the melatonin, which is going to prepare you to go to sleep. So you need to give your eyes a rest, but getting that sleep is going to be huge. Okay, so metrics I like. So we got heart rate, we've got steps, we've got sleep, heart rate variability we covered. Okay, and then lastly is Vo2 Max. And so in here, and I found this very interesting as well, is going to show you your Vo2 Max. And this little chart here, this range is one of the comparable charts that I was going to share in my notes. And maybe I'll do it real quick next week. This you'll need a watch for. And what's interesting is that they use basically kind of the same method to arrive at your proposed Vo2 Max as the Concept 2 rower. So the Concept 2 rower, you are plugging in your work output based off what the monitor has said to you. In this case, the app is just able to figure out what you're doing based off of your motion. So if you're walking, it kind of figures out you're walking. If you're doing rowing, it figures out that you're rowing. And it will give you an estimate of your Vo2 Max based off of your current metrics, so your weight and whatnot, your heart rate, and your movement. So let me read to you what it says in here. So it's a measurement of your Vo2 Max. It's the maximum amount of oxygen that your body can consume during exercise. This is something you can improve on. You can improve your ability to consume oxygen. Oxygen is energy. In a way, this is food, right? We don't think about it, right? Because we're breathing it, we're not digesting it. But oxygen is our #1 energy source. It's much greater than the fuel that we get from food. Okay, so think about being able to improve how you feel, to improve your energy, is going to be through your Vo2 Max. Okay, it's also called cardiorespiratory fitness. So as it improves, your heart strengthens, you become more fit and more healthy. And so higher Vo2 Max is better fitness. And so what it does here is it requires, okay, so we're getting an estimated Vo2 Max with heart rate and motion. That's how they're doing it in this fitness tracker. And so it can record an estimated Vo2 max when you could do a walk, a hike, or a run. And here's what's interesting. It's validated for users 20 and older, which is everybody here. And I tested this. So I used the Concept 2 calculation and the calculation given in here based off of one workout. and it came up with the same number for me. So these two are highly correlated. They're both independently validated metrics that are actually proving to be in sync with one another. So I think that's really neat, because now we can look at, you know, if there's a discrepancy there, what is the discrepancy? So for instance, let's say you do a row wearing your watch, and the app gives you an estimate of your VO2 max. And then we plug in your effort into the Concept 2 calculator, and there's a wild discrepancy. Well, if the app is estimating you to have more ability than what you actually did on the row, to me, that tells me that we need to strategize, some mental strategies, or maybe some technique strategies. But for some reason, you're underperforming. So is it, that you're not comfortable with pain? Like, is there some discomfort? If you're not comfortable with breathing hard, or the lactate, the burning in your muscles to push through that, or is your technique suffering, where you're putting in the work but you're not getting the performance feedback you need to? Or maybe it could tell us something amazing, where the app's giving you a certain VO2 max, and you like completely knocked it out of the park and exceeded that expectation on the rower. Then we can say like, hey, that was a true, like absolute 110% effort. Like, you have exceeded what the app is estimating you at based off of your heart rate, and current metrics. So I think it can be really, really powerful. And when you put all these things together, you start to get an internal measurement of your fitness. And really, there's nothing more true than that, right? We don't necessarily want to hold ourselves up to other people's performance standards. This is how we can get very frustrated. What people are doing in the fitness industry should be only taken as inspiration of what's possible, right? So when I watch somebody squat 500 pounds, I go, wow, that's incredible. Now I know that's possible, right? So I need to stop putting limitations on myself, because all humans have the ability to adapt. So if one person can do it, anybody can do it. Now, the road between might be long, and we might have to figure out, what in the world did that person do? Am I even willing to do what that person did? But I now know what's possible. But I should not compare myself or value my journey based off of where they're at, based off of where I'm at, because those things come and go based off of your consistency and your training focus. But the heart rate variability, the VO2 max, these are things that can carry over from discipline to discipline, and that are proven through many studies to put years on your life. So the one study showed that I was going to share today.
It's 1 o'clock.
With the VO2 max. So it's measured. Let me look at how it's measured. Anyway, it's like, so oxygen consumption, I think it's like some milliliters per unit. Sorry guys, but it's the unit of literally like the volume of oxygen that you can take in. And what they found was, for every unit of measure that it goes up, so just one unit of measure correlated with some like 45 days on your life. Okay. And we're able to really push those units way up. So, right now, when you go ahead and look in the Concept 2 app, and you do some play around in there and get an estimate of where you're at and where you're going, you'll see we're going to move you probably, 20, 30 units up, 20, 30 units of measure up. So you start doing that math, and that's going to, start literally putting years on your life. And that's just that metric in isolation, right? But then when you start compounding it with like Well, what are you doing to get from point A to point B and improving your VO2 max? You're improving your diet, you're improving your sleep, you're improving all these other areas of your life that are also shown to put years on your life. And now we're figuring out how somebody like Peter Attia is saying that exercise is a 5-fold reduction in all-cause mortality, and it's adding, maybe a decade to your life. So it's really pretty fascinating stuff. And it's not just a decade on your life, but it's arriving to those decades fit. Like, you can keep that VO2 max forever. Like, you can get there and keep improving, and holding on to that. You're trying to, again, oxygen is fuel for the body, it's fuel for the cells. As we age, you hear people say, like, they lose their appetite, appetite goes down, metabolism goes down, and the body starts kind of falling apart. And it's like, well, you're losing your ability to use energy, right? And we want to improve our metabolism so that we can eat more, but what about just, like, literally fuel number one, oxygen consumption? If you're losing your ability to consume oxygen, what kind of quality of life do you expect to have, right? And why not value that? That's where I'm at, guys. So I wish I could be more persuasive, more compelling, but just tying back to that original idea of productivity and what are we getting paid with, right? Like, when you're saying, I'm busy, I got to put in work to do X, Y, and Z, what are you getting paid with? What is the return, right? I'm saying, look at your effort and consider that some of the things you get in return should be your ability to live, right? It's more than just putting food on the table. It's being able to use that fuel, being able to use oxygen to recover, being able to have a heart that's going to last, to be around, to appreciate those things. And at the end of the day, all that's going to lead to, honestly, happiness, and less suffering. And the less you're suffering through physical pain, through cloudy head, through stress, then the more you're able to share your true self, to love, to help others, and to create a better environment around you. So it's a long way of saying all that, but I'm really trying to sell, like, these are some of the most important things that we're just not looking at, and they're right here already being tracked. You're wearing a watch, you've got a phone in your pocket, it's already doing it for you. This is, I guess, kind of the conversion of human and machine. And we don't want the machines telling us what we ought to be doing, and they're not yet, but really we can look at them and ask, how could we be doing a little bit better, just by paying attention to some of the things that they're tracking. Look, if the phones and whatnot are already tracking us, and they're already selling our data, and we're already the product, then at least get some benefit out of it, right? At least find out, okay, how many steps am I actually taking, and how can I build in walks throughout the day to up that number? What is my actual resting heart rate, and why shouldn't I deserve to be in the optimal zone, right? Whose decision is that? It's your decision at the end of the day, whether or not you want to be in the optimal zone. The path to cardiorespiratory fitness, that is actually the easiest journey in all of fitness. Strength is hard, okay? Peaking in strength is a hard journey. skills are hard. Cardiorespiratory fitness is, I should say, it's simple. It's a simple path. We can get that. I guarantee you, if you are willing to do what I ask you, we get that heart rate down and get that VO2 max up. And next week, I'll not forget my notes and I'll share those studies that show people, huge cohorts of people, and how much longer they lived because of those outcomes. So, all right, y'all. I appreciate you sticking with me. If you have a watch, highly recommend get in there and just dig around and dig deeper. With these apps, there's always something more you can click, and there's layers to these data. And make sure you follow it all the way through, right? Don't just look at the resting or the heart rate and say, oh, my heart rate is 61. That's just your average. That means nothing. Look at your resting heart rate. Look at the heart rate range. We can test things in here. We can actually physically test your max heart rate so that we're not just going off of estimates. Once we actually find your max heart rate, we can give you heart rate zones to train in. That will be something super powerful when we're rowing. Instead of me saying, hey, let's do, modulate intensity by stroke rate, I can say, hey, let's modulate intensity by having you hang out at this certain heart rate. Your progress will go way faster like that. And yeah, just use it. I'm encouraging it. I'm ready to turn the corner in what I'm doing in here with fitness. I think we're at the point where it's not a huge ask because people already have these devices. And so if you have it, I'd say let's connect, let's use it to our advantage and accelerate this process. Okay, I'm going to stop. You guys have any questions? All good? I'm going to take that as an all good across the board. Well, I appreciate you all sticking with me and letting me go off on prioritizing health and using these tools to our advantage. Obviously, I think it's super important. And I never for sure know where people are at. I never doubt that you think it's important, but if I can somehow get the feeling of importance that's inside of me out to you guys, that's what I'm trying to do. I don't always know the best way other than to just keep on saying it until we're there. So, all right, y'all. Well, I appreciate it. And some of you I'll see you in the gym soon. And otherwise, I'll see y'all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.